Today is Thursday, 16th of November. We have a panel, panel discussion. I have here Danny Mayo. I have online a few other members. We have Anne Moffat, who's calling from Australia right now. Ali Lowe, who is calling from a little bit northern than here. Amit from London. Professor William Scott from Oxford, as far as I remember. Hank from the US. Danny that I have here, and Jane from Guernsey. This is a hybrid event and it's a joint event between the British Computer Society groups of Consultancy Specialist Group and the IT Leaders Forums. So the first one that I'm going to introduce is going to be Anne. Perhaps you can introduce very briefly yourself. I mean, you have a long history. You have been one of the pioneers in IT, one of the first women in IT, and you have been quite a reference person in Australia. Can you tell us very briefly a little bit of your story?
Yes, that's right. I joined the industry in 1959, and the person who taught me to code was Conway Berners-Lee, who's Tim Berners-Lee's dad, at Ferranti. I've done all sorts of things in the industry, from programming through to managing companies, managing big teams. I've been a fellow of the British Computer Society since I think, I can't remember the date. I was the first woman on the BCS Council, and I moved to Australia in 1974. And of course, I had to start all over again by joining the Australian Computer Society and getting the Fellow of the Australian Computer Society there again.
Thank you very much, Anne. I'm going to move. The next person that I have in my list is Ali. Ali, good afternoon, good evening. How are you doing?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, good. I'm going to give you a couple of minutes to introduce briefly yourself, and then.
I started my career up in Aberdeen in a small software house, and then went to a consultancy based out of Aberdeen, then latterly Edinburgh. Ended up as managing director for the UK before I then moved from consultancy into financial services and held various CIO IT director roles there for about 14, 15 years in a couple of different companies, and then moved back into consultancy about 2 years ago. So about half my career has been in consultancy and half been in corporate roles. So I find enjoyment in both sides of that equation, and hopefully can add something into the panel discussion.
Thank you very much, Ali. I'm going to move to Amit. Amit, good evening. How are you doing?
Good evening. I'm very well, thank you. How are you?
Good. Can you introduce briefly yourself?
Sure, yes. I am a high-level CEO and a CIO and a CTO who has initiated and inspired many business and digital transformations to benefit citizens, patients, and financial consumers within the tax, local to national government and international banking corporations by utilizing my consultancy skills to better serve the needs of the customer. Even as a CEO, I have been an IT consultant at heart, always transforming customer needs to real-life benefits which the customers can breathe, feel, and relate to, so that the customers can enrich every aspect of their lives. So that's a bit about me, yes.
Thank you very much, Amit. Then I'm going to be moving to Danny. Sorry, Paul.
No, that's okay. You tricked me by looking that way. Hello, everyone, and hello to people on the Zoom call. My name's Danny Major. I've had a career in technology. Started briefly in research and development. Moved on to what I think is a foundation for all good IT careers, working on a support desk. Thereafter, I got into managed services, business change and process improvement. Thereafter, I moved back into kind of the customer-facing world of again, kind of supporting managed services business. And then somehow stumbled across more senior roles, and then since moved into kind of advisory services on myself. Talking about the jump between consultancy and kind of working within a business. In the last week or so, I've used a consultancy hat and taken on a chief customer officer role. So I'm kind of going back into the lion's den again. But yeah, it's interesting. That myriad of moving to and from consulting and other roles. So yeah, good to talk today.
Congratulations for that. Yeah. Going to be moved into the next person, Hank. A good afternoon, I think. Can you hear us well?
Yes, I can hear you well, and I can see everybody. Thanks.
Can you introduce you briefly, very briefly?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. Well, hello all. Thanks, Antonio, David, for inviting me. I'm 40 years in the IT industry. From technician to CIO and CTO, I've founded and sold companies, as well as moving into and out of consulting in between and on purpose many times. I'm now a senior executive partner at Gartner, where I coach, advise, and I mentor C-level executives, and leveraging my consulting and leadership experiences daily. So really happy to be here to talk about that. I just have to add real quick that I'm required to say I'm representing myself as a BCS fellow today and not my employer. So my opinions and what I talk about are my own and don't represent those of my employer. Having said that, I can now speak freely. So looking forward to the rest of the call.
Thank you very much, Hank. And the last but not least, we have William, Professor William. Hello, good evening.
Good evening. How are you all?
Good. Can you introduce briefly yourself?
Yeah, so I'm a bit of an odd combination. So first of all, as a senior leader in increasingly large IT organizations, and then as a consultant and an entrepreneur. So I built and sold several interesting consultancy businesses. So that's another leg. And then finally, as a professor, I carry out global research, which has resulted in some insights about how to do leadership, which I've found useful, even if nobody else does, as well as still consulting to countries and organizations worldwide on leadership and, believe it or not, happiness. So hopefully I can give a fairly comprehensive view of today's topic. Looking forward to it.
All right. Thank you very much, William.
Good evening and hello, everybody. My name's Jane Wanacott. I'm now a non-executive director. I started out wanting to do a computer science degree, but wanting to be a teacher, and was involved to do two subjects. I did chemistry and maths, which included the computing in that. Went into teaching and absolutely hated it. Did medical research, first using the chemistry, then using the IT to do the research, and eventually decided it was about time I had a career, and went to an IT recruitment fair in London. And they said, you'd be good in pharmaceuticals. You've got the science, the medicine, and the IT. So I worked my way up from an analyst programmer to head of IT in the UK for a pharmaceutical company, was made redundant, and then was made an international IT director for a clinical research company. So I moved house with two small children and did that job and was made redundant again. Both were with mergers, and decided I didn't want to move the family again and went into consulting. That was mainly through a network. And I was a principal and then a management consultant for a company and ran a team of consultants on business change. I did that for about 6 years, by which time the work-life balance, I'm afraid, got a bit too much with 2 or 3 nights away. And I applied and got a job as IT director for the States of Guernsey, which is a crown dependency in the English Channel. And I did that job for 14 years before consolidating all the IT, outsourcing it, and making myself redundant again, hence now being a non-executive director.
Right. Thank you very much. I'm going to start now with the questions to each participant. I'm going to be asking questions directly to the participants. I won't do any Q&A until the end because of the timing. So I'm going to start first with Ali. Ali, part of the story, I think you and Jane has a very good example of the idea that we want to transmit. So I just want to tell us a little bit more about this journey, how you find consultancy, and how he has helped you from moving from one role to the one IT leadership role, and how had you helped you to progress in your career?
Yeah, it's I think the starting point for me is technology is actually a people business. which I think still surprises people that aren't in technology. But if we start with that as a premise, I think good consultancies focus on a number of things that are directly transferable to leadership roles within IT. So, and from my own journey, it's where I'm speaking from. I think if you look at it, one of the best things that you learn as a consultant is as soon as you step on site, you're selling yourself. So you've got to be clear about what your value proposition is for yourself and for your company. And I think that early introduction to value is a strong, it's more than just a myth. It's more of an ethos in terms of how it then translates into IT director, CTO, or whatever. And it also starts to teach you how to develop relationships, how to build trust, how you do that for the long term, not just transactional relationships with clients. So done well for successful consultancy, it is all around the people. Yeah, of course, you need to know the technology and everything else, but I think the people side of that, good consultancies teach their people all the way up through the organization. And the more senior you get, it starts to become even more important as you're dealing with more senior stakeholders than clients. You're learning to build trust with those people. You're learning to network. You're learning to sell. All those, I think, are really important to any technology leadership where you're building relationships with other C-suite. You're selling the proposition of what you bring to the table and what your department and your teams do. So all those kind of things taught early into consultancy, I think, stand really well as soon as you take on a leadership role within a corporate environment. I think the other thing it gives you is perspective, diversity. So as a consultant, I've worked in utilities, oil and gas, water, financial services, all the different types of that, insurance, retail banking, wealth management. So you get to see lots of different things. And I think that gives you a perspective you can then bring back into a corporate role at the same time as well. And there is a couple of things I think it doesn't give you as well. I think I only learned to be a true leader when I went into the corporate side, where you've got to own and take responsibilities, not just about consultancy and advice. And then leading 600 odd people, I think that's a different dynamic from a consultancy. So it's a different type of leadership. And I think it really starts to stretch your leadership capabilities, which then you can cycle back around. If you go back into consultancy, I do think I was a better leader once I came back out of corporate. A couple of times I did that as well. So for me, I think to sum it all up is back to this is a people business. Consultancy knows that and teaches you skills that are life skills in a lot of ways that really stand CIOs, CTOs in good stead.
Right. Thank you very much, Holly. I will come back later with at the point of the Q&A, but first I'm going to be moving. As I was saying, Jen has also a really good story. The career fits quite well in this story that we want to combine between the cycles. So, Jen, I'm just going to come back to you. I'm just going to ask you, your career. You have been seeing the cycle a few times. Can you tell us a little bit more about this? How has been this cycle of starting your career, becoming a leader, eventually arriving into consultancy? How consultancy have thereafter helping you into this cycle of IT and consultancy and back? Yeah.
Okay. So I think working your way up and being in IT is very good for getting to know your customer, and you can be very proud of what you're doing when you're part of the company that you're doing IT for, and you learn a lot of skills from that. When I went into consultancy, it gave a lot of comfort to my customers because I'd been in their shoes before and I knew all the challenges and things that they had. And it was therefore surprisingly easy to be a consultant, having been in IT, because I could relate and build trust with the people who were then my customers. I was largely with pharmaceutical, medical, healthcare and compliance. So it was nuclear, BNFL, British Nuclear Fuels as well, that I worked for on that side. So when the consulting ended, it was, as Ali already said, it was very good to go back into an organization and learn how to sell, how to network, how to bring my experience of so many other companies and organizations to bear and improve what I could bring to the table, really, based on on the actual global experience from having been a consultant.
Right. Thank you very much, Jane. Danny, I'm going to take you next. I hope you'll mind. Going to the next three people that are going to bring forward. They have, I think, something I have a more different view or more in different perspective. Danny, from the conversation that I have been having with you, you had an exceptional view on what is entrepreneurship, what you have in your career has played a very important part. So again, I'm going to bounce with you on this idea of the cycle between getting into leadership first, and then finding consultancy that may have helped you. And all within the perspective also that you have this great lens through the entrepreneurship and the entrepreneurship mind that I think is something that you keep having and helps you also.
Thank you. So I think I tried to join the dots between the two, as is the point of today. So I think one of the things that I can't claim, I made this up myself, but this analogy of working for the business rather than in the business. I think within leadership roles, you need to elevate yourself out of the day-to-day, and actually a lot of synergies and similarities with consultancy. I think consultancy can be a lonely place, but actually you're normally in there to get a job done. You can almost be abstracted away from the noise that sometimes goes on in the business. So this kind of analogy of working for the business rather than in the business, I think stems from both leadership roles as well as consultancy. My own kind of foray into this quite early on in my career that I accidentally stumbled into was around process change and setting up organizational processes. And actually this gave me probably similar to what Ali was saying, actually this broader perspective, because where early on in my career I was working in a particular area and that was my world. When you get into the consultancy area of organizational change, actually you're dealing with finance, business operations, sales, IT, and it's just kind of widens your lens on actually how organizations run. And I think that again kind of transpires into another similarity between leadership and consultancy. I actually think consultancy is incredibly strategic. You're not working day to day, week to week. You're normally in there to get something done, and that could be maybe not a multi-year, but definitely a multi-quarter, or worst case scenario, multi-month activity. So you almost instinctively have a longer term lens on what you're there to do. And anyone who's ever tried to do any type of change, it's all born from relationships. It's something I probably learned a little bit too late, but if you're trying to do change, organizations are a people business. Organizations argue, are they sales led? Are they product led? If you talk to sales, they think they're sales led. If you talk to product, they think they're product led. But if you are in a leadership role within that organization, you need to understand what motivates those different teams. You need to be empathetic to their needs. And if you're trying to re-steer the ship in a different direction, being aware of those motivations, those needs of organizations, I think is incredibly important, and something I only learned from early on, having that exposure to those different business units to understand what makes people tick and again, what their motivations are.
Thank you very much, Danny. Just a reminder to everybody that is online, if you have any questions, you can place them in the chat. I will open room for questions just after speaking with the last panelist, which I hope to be before 7:30 here. Just going to keep moving. The next person that I'm going to invite to talk is Amit. Amit, good evening. From all the panelists, from all our discussions, I think you have the point of view which is a little bit more technical. You have been able to get into the IT leadership, but I think your path has been a little bit more through a more technical pathway. Can you tell us a little bit more? What did you see within this cycle? How consultancy have helping you to progress with your career?
Sure. Yes. So from a technical perspective, what has helped me to become an outstanding CTO and a senior IT leader is my early exposure to open source technologies. such as enterprise Java technologies, for example. As everyone else has been saying, there's a common thing here is relationship management. That's what IT consultancy has helped me. It's helped me to develop my relationship management skills, which enables me to better relate to my C-level peers, as well as multiple outsourcing and cloud partners. And also, I think this relationship management will help you to build capabilities in the stakeholder management area. So this is needed to build relationships with your C-level colleagues, as I've said, such as CEO, CMO, Chief Marketing Officer, etc. So I think so you would need both, in my opinion, both the people skills, both the business skills and the technical skills to be an outstanding and exceptional CTO and a CIO and any IT leader, for example. So that's my take on this. Yes.
Thank you very much, Amit. I'm going to move. Probably one of the person that has the most unique perspective today is Professor William. You're probably going to be able to tell us, and your career will relate yourself to the cycle as well. You can talk us from a point of view of a consultant and an IT leader. But one of the things that most of the people won't be able to do is to talk us from the point of view or also on a scholar, on an academic. So can you tell us more a little bit about this cycle from the perspective of a scholar and an academic?
Yeah, so as everybody said, really, as well as the basic technical skills, a prime requirement and a differentiator for a consultant. So the difference between a good consultant and a bad consultant, or an ineffective consultant, let's say, is usually something to do with persuasion, influence, and basically selling. Nobody likes the word selling, but we're not trying to sell something people don't want. It's trying to get people to understand they did want it in the first place, but they might not have realized. So those kind of skills, are really the things that set aside a successful consultant. And curiously enough, it's pretty much the same for leaders, because you have to take people to places they didn't really want to go to. You have to take people to places they didn't realize were beneficial to them. And you have to get people to understand that, what you're trying to do is useful, even if they didn't think it was in the first place. And it's to them, it's not useful necessarily just for the organization. You have to persuade people that it's useful for them for one reason or another. The other great thing that consultancy brings, which is very important for leadership, is a perspective. So when we consult to large organizations, quite often you find that the kind of motivations, the things that are important at the board level are not that important if you look at the organization as a profit making or whatever it is, in terms of its objectives, because people get caught up in all sorts of stuff within organizations, politics and all sorts of other things that go on. And one of the things that consultants get is a really good sense of perspective. So, is what I'm doing actually going to make a difference? And this reflects what Ali was saying as well. It's about doing something that actually makes a difference for the client, and you get that sense of perspective. So again, I think those two things are really useful between consultancy and leadership. The other thing that's quite interesting, I would like to kind of promote for the BCS leaders, is that, they'll be told that leadership is amazingly complicated, and you have to read, Blue Ocean Strategy and Transformational Leadership and all sorts of other stuff. But actually, if you treat it as a process, like lots of the things you're used to, then it can be made fairly simple to be a fairly reasonable leader. And if anybody's interested in that, you can contact me later. But, leadership is like consultancy. You're selling something, you're then applying a process, and leadership can be seen as a process. And you're applying that process in order to get something done. So, the link between the two is very strong. And that's all our research suggests, that good leaders, as somebody else said on the panel, good leaders have done a load of different things. And that gives them the wider view and the perspective. So that's important as well. So I think, at this kind of stage, those are a few small things I would say, based on a huge amount we could talk about.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, William. The next is going to be Hank. Hank, good afternoon. I'm going to open I'm going to give the word, but before that, just going to mention we have actually our two panelists that came in from farther away, Anna and Hank. I think they have a really interesting story. They have been in this cycle of going to leadership, consulting many times, And they have ended up in a position where they are not only doing this synergy between being a leader and between being a consultant, but also they have become consultants for leaders. So with that remark, I will give you the word, and I'm just going to ask you very briefly, we'll say, what is your view? I mean, you are at the moment you become an advisor for leaders.
Yeah, well, gee, all the information so far that people have given is right on. And I have moved back and forth between consulting and enterprise at least 5 or 6 times, and have wound up here at the, I guess I'll say the golden years of my career. As an executive coach and mentor, which really does bring both pieces together for C-level executives and their direct reports, as I mentioned. So the synergies that have helped my career have been discussed. As a consultant, you learn how to dig deeper. You recognize patterns and common situations, and you actually, if you're the kind of person that persists and is successful in that role, you have a bit of an inner monologue. And you can actually look at what you do and change it. that's not everyone is self-reflective, of course, but if you have that and you're in this role, it's actually pretty good. So I began to recognize things as a consultant that I would then apply as a leader. And probably one of the most important things that I do today is to not try to show that I'm the one who has the answer. Actually, most of the answers to the big problems, at a global level are not something that a consultant is going to answer. It's a decision that a leader has to take. So coaching skills and questioning skills and being willing to ask an open-ended question and wait 4, 5, 6 seconds for an answer is something that you don't normally do. You want to jump in and fill the space with noise and talk and jump right into the first thing they say, which typically isn't the problem. You have to dig a bit, and you do that by asking sort of the very kind of specific patterns of questions, so if you can get to the root cause. And I think that's what you learn. And again, as a leader, then, so learning that, then becoming a leader, in one case at a Fortune 50, like a $55 billion US, employer with 300,000 employees. I had a fairly big staff and responsibility, and I then used those skills with my team. So I would coach my team to be able to sort of uncover what they needed to do and help them get to the problem beneath, not the surface problem as it first came up. Many times as a leader, we find ourselves so close to the situation, we can't see the forest for the trees, as the saying goes, and we focus on solving the wrong problem, or worse. One of the worst things you can do in an enterprise is to try to solve a symptom of the real problem, because that just generates additional work, knock-on work down the line that's very difficult to recover from. So, I mean, as you see on this panel, as I found that the best IT leaders do have consulting backgrounds, and the best consultants have IT backgrounds. And I think that's sort of what we've heard already. I think, having experience in both, I am a better coach and advisor because of it, and because I can empathize and understand the situation du jour, the stress that leaders have, and sort of help them pull up, slow down, seek out the root cause. So this is it's really helped me over my career, and I'm really happy to talk more about it as well, Antonio.
Thank you very much, Hans. And last but not least, Anne, good morning. Your problems with the video and the audio.
Good morning. I'm sorry I wasn't really in the meeting before because I was having trouble with my technology, but it's fine now. I can see everybody. Thank you very much. I really feel for what Hank was saying. What I like leading. I like leading teams. I like leading large teams. But I also like doing some consulting because it makes me feel as if I'm contributing all my experience to that particular instance. So if I get a leadership position, and I've had many, one of the first things I do, just to be practical, is make sure that I have a very, very good deputy so that I can move away if I feel like it and do some consultancy and come back and bring those skills back to the organisation. also, I think as a consultant, you just see so much across so many different organizations, and that really expands your understanding of what IT is all about and how people are using it, and all. I just bringing that back to a team and really exciting them about our industry. And it's not just a job, it's a profession. That's really what makes me tick.
Thank you very much, Anne. One thing that I will mention, I don't know if we have mentioned before, you were telling me when I was first speaking with you that in your career you started as involved. You were one of these early pioneers in IT, and that has been leading you through the path of leadership and consulting back and forward. And you were mentioning that at the end of the later part of your career, even some of the governments or some institutions were reaching you to ask you for advice. Can you tell us a little bit more about that part of the story as well?
Yes, I think once you've made your mark in the industry, a lot of people feel that they want to get you to come and join them. And the thing that sometimes worries me is that a lot of those people have an agenda, and they want you to back their agenda. Now, sometimes their agenda isn't really very appropriate, isn't appropriate for the enterprise, isn't appropriate for anybody. And it's a very difficult and delicate job to persuade them that, yes, you've spent time in their organization, yes, you understand their organization now, but the track they thought they were taking and wanted you to endorse wasn't necessarily right for the enterprise. That's a difficult track to walk.
Yeah. And that's also something that eventually will differentiate you as a both consultant and leader, being honest, being saying what is good for society, what is really correct from a business point of view, and not just trying to tell them what they want to hear. Right. I'm going to be moving to questions, so I'm going to open the floor for questions. We have a first question from Kiran. I'm going to allow Kiran. Can you turn on your camera if that's not a problem, and voice your question.
So I've done some consulting. Today I'm an academic. I was in the corporate world. I moved from from IT to corporate to consulting to full-time academia. And so I feel that never mind what I feel. How much of consulting do you think is an art? You just, it's like you have it, it's a bit like being able to recognize what people need. How much is experience which you need to earn? You need to put in the years to get that, and how much of it is a skill which you can go and get a degree in and learn? So there are three things. I think it's a skill, experience, and the art of it. So I'd be very happy to hear from anybody. What do you think is the division between these three things?
Thank you. I'm going to just mention very quickly, and then I'm going to give the word to panelists. I think one of the challenges with these things of leadership or consultancy is that you need to learn on the skin, and you won't have opportunity to practice. So if you're a consultant, you will have the opportunity to wear too many different hats in many different places. And that is going to be something that is going to make a big difference, because you won't have a sandbox, or you don't have something. I'm probably going to come back to you, Danny, but I think Amit was going to talk, and if any of the other panelists want to make a comment, please raise your hand.
Sure. Yes. So the skill is like, stakeholder management, such as stakeholder management, program management, etc. You can learn those skills and then build up experience in the area. And I believe with experience, you gain credibility. So credibility requires experience throughout your career, and you build your credibility, and everyone respects you and trusts you. And I think where the art comes in is where you tell your experience and skills, knowledge, etc. to solve a particular needs of an organization or what the issues they're facing. So I think that's how it fits in. The 3 points that you made about skill, experience, and art. I think that's how it would work.
Thank you, Matt. I see that Jane was raising her hand. Jane, you probably want to mute yourself.
It's a really good question, Kieran. And I would say it's almost an equal mix of all those things you said. So is it learned? Well, some of it is learned. When I started in consulting, I really had to learn from my fellow consultants on my first job. Funny enough, the first thing I learned was how to be expert in PowerPoint. but there are obviously many skills that have to be learned. And most of them, from my point of view, being where I was, were being learned on the job rather than courses, although my company did provide me with some skills such as how to support the sales organization and that sort of thing. So learning's a big part, but then there is the earning, because you have to prove by getting the feedback from your customers and from your team. So I worked my way up as a consultant as well as I got more experience and was better able to run projects and things for customers. And finally, honed. I think you need some skills to bring to the table that can then be honed in how you deal with people, the EQ that somebody's already mentioned today, the confidence, and getting the right balance between discussing things with them and not always agreeing and going into the depths of operations. Even if you do agree with them, you have to be, as a consultant, you have to be very diplomatic as well. And that's definitely comes with time.
Yeah, maybe just a couple other things. I think on part of it, you've got to enjoy it. It's a hard slog sometimes, and I think most people here have probably been in situations where you put literally months into something for someone to go, actually priorities have changed, or not right now. And that if you don't enjoy it and kind of think, okay, I'm going to get past this bit and move on to the next, then you're probably not going to be in consultancy very long. I think the other part is probably luck, and it's not necessarily about being lucky as an individual, but we're talking about getting broad exposure. And sometimes you might take a consulting role or a leadership role, and it can be the wrong one. It can set you back sometimes years. So I think actually there's the luck aspect of, did you land the right role at the right time in the right industry with the right people? And that then allows you to grow your own experience and make you even more applicable to the next role. So yeah, maybe other kind of two items.
Very quickly, do you think luck is something that you find, or do you think it's something that you can grow?
So my mentor says better to be lucky than good. Don't quite believe with that in entirety, but you can maybe influence your luck, but I do think sometimes it is about landing the right role. And you go into these things eyes open, but sometimes you never know exactly what you let yourself in for until you get there.
Makes a lot of sense.
Thanks everyone so far. I just sort of wanted to segue into this sort of landing the right role and looking at it. Any consultancy I've done in the past has always been as a result of somebody seeing the work I've done in a role and that word of mouth thing. But I was wondering if you could ask the panel how you then sort of expand that into a sustainable consultancy, and what are the most effective ways of getting yourself out there to actually be found as a consultant by others? What do people find effective?
I'm going to let other people. I'm going to let Hank go first. Hank.
That's a great question. And they're all great questions so far, but I had a mentor long time ago, and I said, his name was Jack. And I said, Jack, how did you get where you are? How did this happen? And he says, Hank, always share the glory, but always be seen sharing the glory. So I think, in response to the question of how you get it out there is to do just that, talk well about the folks that you're working with. And today that, fast forward, 35, 40 years, that means, a good LinkedIn, a positive LinkedIn, type of an experience or other mechanisms to be able to show this, work with academia. I'm working with two different universities right now, sort of almost like a pro bono approach, just because I find it fascinating. Or actually three. So then the word starts, going around that, hey, this person is doing these things, and then talking about it, but I'm not trying to take credit for it because it isn't just me. It's actually a fusion of ideas and people. So I'm perfectly happy to share the glory. But I am also perfectly happy to be seen sharing the glory as I am here today.
Yes, thank you very much, Han. From the rest, I see Anne and then Alistair. So Anne first.
Yes, I'd like to make a comment on that. We've heard that one of the things that you have to do as a consultant is sell. And I hate the idea of selling. I see we've got Steve Shirley in the audience and she'll laugh. I've never enjoyed selling. What I do enjoy is having a good reputation and being brought in somewhere because of my good education. My good experience. And as you get older, you find that happens more and more. People have heard of the work you've done for a particular organisation and how it's worked out. And then they invite you, can you come and do the same sort of thing for me? Now, to me, every consulting job is different. You're starting right from the beginning. Even if you think you know the organisation, you've read up about the organisation, you still need to come in a sort of humble way almost and say, please tell me about your organisation. Tell me what makes you tick. And then, of course, with the experience you've gained over many, many consultancies, you can help them understand themselves. Sometimes they're too close to themselves and they can't see themselves as well as they perhaps should. And a consultant's job is perhaps to help people see themselves and see what they're doing.
Thank you very much, Anne. Ali, you were going to you raise your hand. I give you.
Yeah, I think there's two things I'd say about this one. Word of mouth around your reputation, as Anne just said, is hugely important, and it's amazing how fast that word can go around from client to client, because in most industries they all know each other. So you do a good job for one, then it does get around and people start, but it takes time. It's not something that happens overnight. So there's that part of it, and deepening the relationship with your existing clients is always, it's just a good thing to do. But the other side of that as well is, so a bit like Anne, I don't like the hard sell type mentality either. It is about finding ways to give back into communities at the same time, give a bit of free consultancy, free advice, non-advisory type work as well. Whatever the strategy is for the specific consultancy, it all makes a difference. Builds your own brand, builds the company's brand. But the thing for me is you've always got to have that focus on value. Where are you adding value back and how do you create that? And unfortunately, some of it doesn't happen overnight because we're not in a transactional business. It's not like we're trying to sell product or hardware or cloud services. Well, maybe we are. But the type of consultancy certainly I've been involved in, it is a relationship selling that we're doing, and that takes a bit of time, unfortunately.
Thank you very much, Charlie.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Just going to go back. I have another question in there. I just lost. Yeah, Simon, I think that we have another question in the chat. I'm unable to really get to the chat. So
yeah, Antonio, you have Sean waiting with his camera on with his question.
Oh, fantastic. Hi, Sean. Good day.
Hi there. Thank you very much. Yeah, fascinating conversation so far. So yeah, I guess I took the jump myself, which is obviously why this has interested me, to move from an IT leadership role 2 years ago into a consultancy role. And I think, like anything, like I think was already mentioned by one of the panelists, that there's always a bit of risk, isn't there, when you jump from one sort of, comfortable role that you were in for a number of years into something like consultancy, because have you gone in the right place? Is it the right thing for you? But ultimately, I think it was about, I wanted to have that experience across, as has been mentioned, across different sectors, because I think, certainly when it comes to applying for roles, I found, okay, I believe I can do this role, but okay, well, do you have financial sector experience? Well, no, I don't, but I think, IT works across multiple sectors. So, so this for me is really enabled me to get that sort of sector experience. I guess it's, though, I know some of you have talked about you've been able to move between being an IT leadership role to consultancy and back again. And that seems to have been quite effortless from what I can tell. And I just wondered, because I know how some recruiters' minds think, and, you know, it may be, well, you've been in consultancy for a while, you used to do this, so we'll bring you back in as a head of IT maybe, but, and that's not for me, progression. So I guess it's just to anyone that might be able to give some advice in that respect, to say, well, you know, with the consultancy skills that you have, how can you then take that to, you know, advance your career in another senior leadership role?
Thank you very much. I know that William was not, we didn't spoke before, so I don't know if he would like to mention something. Before throwing him to the bus, just going to see if anyone else wants to speak.
Yeah, I guess from my point of view, you know, I wouldn't see going to a senior IT leadership role as going backwards particularly. I mean, the way careers work these days is going round and round, accumulating experiences, building up, if you like, your track record of abilities and capability to make yourself more valuable. So unless you're focused on either, you know, just the financial reward of a level or a level of something, but if you're focused on accumulating as much experience as possible so that you're as valuable as possible and you can make as much difference as possible, then I would basically say, you know, you're not going backwards. At worst, you're going sideways, but at best, you're going round and round to accumulate experience. You know, and you may end up as a consultant again at some time in the future. So I think it's more, I mean, I've addressed the point about somebody feeling that they're going backwards, but that would be my main point, I think.
I agree with, or I think it resonates quite well on me. What you're saying, I don't think it's moving backwards. It's a different story. And I just going to bounce to Hank, who raised the hand. And I think his story is also quite compelling because he has been in IT leadership, he has been in consultancy, and now he's consulting for leaders, which is also, I will say, is going a little bit home. So, Hank, I just open the wall for you. I know you still mute.
Yeah, I succumbed to the mute button. So William, you know, brought out some great points. It's not going backwards at all, actually. In most cases. And I'll also throw out there that it's not effortless. You've put a tremendous amount of energy into preparing yourself for this. And so what it boils down to is when you come back around, you need to be able to be at a higher dimension than you were the first time. So you need to be able to present value at a higher level. You need to be able to talk about things less obvious, that when people hear it and they think and they go, oh, I actually never thought about thinking about the people outside of our enterprise and how they interface with our salespeople. I've only thought about IT from the inside, looking at the digital workplace solution I give them. So you start talking like that, and you throw words like, well, gee, as goes employee engagement with their digital workplace solution, so goes customer loyalty and profits. Next thing you know, you're presenting to the board about where they should hire you. So it's about upping your game every single time, and taking what you've learned as a consultant and all the stuff everyone else on this panel has talked about having all these different experiences, synthesizing that and being able to come back and then present yourself at the next level. And that's I'll just pause there.
Thank you very much, Hank. I really like that. I have another question in the chat. I just first going to check people in the room. Any questions?
All right. Thanks for this evening. Sorry, I was a bit late, but this may be covered. I've been doing a consulting role for the last 4 years, and it's been, touch wood, very good for me. I wanted to gain more knowledge about non-executive director roles, so NED roles, basically. And I'd like to ask the panel if they've had experience of getting into NED roles, because the experience I find is that it's very much geared to more management or FD type of experience. And then there are roles that are, you know, especially with AI coming more on board, more widespread, there are board levels that need that expertise. And those who've come from an IT background are in a good position to advise these boards, but yet the entry or to get into these roles are not as easy. I'm not saying it's difficult, and I agree that most of the experience selling yourself, but still there is, you know, when it comes to those from an IT background compared to the FDs, it's kind of, you know, not plain sailing, as I'm trying to say. So yes, I'd like to see if the panelists have experience and if they can give some advice on how to crack this particular nut, so to speak.
Thank you very much. I see that Anis and Jane are raising their hands. And
what I'd like to say is, when you get to board level, you see quite a different view of the world. And you have to learn also that the world isn't all about IT, especially as you can see that IT is being more and more important in every single organisation. And also when you get onto the board, often you're with a group of people who really don't understand IT from the basic level. So what you've got to do is a lot of sort of coaching. I've never gone after a board position. I've been invited to join boards, and I've been choosy. There's some that I would go on and some that I wouldn't be interested in going on. But when you're on the board, when you're at the board level, it really is a gently help these people to understand where IT fits into their organisation and what it can do. But it's no use talking about that all the time. The board has other things on its mind, and so listening is a very good skill to have.
Yeah, I definitely have to agree with listening is one of the it's a very useful skill that not everybody pays enough attention to it. Just going to go to Jane. Jane, you raised the hand. Thank you very much.
Yes, well, I am on the non-executive route, just to reply to that question, and it isn't easy. And I totally sympathise with everybody that they take needing to have been in finance or law or possibly HR. And although, in my personal experience, although boards say they want diversity, at the end of the day, they certainly, for the boards I've been looking at, they still want you to come with their financial and other backgrounds. However, the best experience I can recommend for getting a non-exec role is to actually do some pro bono ones first, and join organisations that give you some skills to work at board level, and then the paid ones come after that. Now, I'm still trying to build more paid ones, but having done the pro bono, it can give you a real insight at with fairly low risk in terms of helping. And as Anne said, it isn't just about IT, it's using all your background, your consulting background, your leadership background, listening and seeing where you can help solve problems, suggest strategic ideas or whatever. It's bringing it all together in one place.
Right, yeah. Again, someone suggested this to me. Charities, not-for-profits, it is pro bono work. Most of them are shouting out for IT experience. You've got the sex side of things, you've got generative AI, and there's so many unknowns, and most not-for-profits can't tap into that experience. If you need to give a little bit away, get the experience, kind of really understand you can't get into it unless you've done it sometimes. Actually, charity work I kind of found useful was getting the skills on the door, and then using that to get yourself into another role.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I see one, as I was saying, one question that I will read from the chat. May have room for another question from the people in the room or online. Just going to go back to the person in the chat. Randolph Atkins-Mott. I don't know if you have any problem to open your camera. And if not, well, just if you can voice the question. It's going to be.
Yeah, I'm here. Thanks for that. So the question was around when trying to get leadership and management roles, they often see a consultant has been a consultant, then wants a leadership or management role. And they say because of their lack of management experience, they're not qualified. You know, it doesn't matter if you've done 5, 10, 20 projects and you've led teams. They want people who actually have skills in day-to-day managing people's issues, career development and things like that. And although I've done that, what I've often seen in the market is they're not really willing to take consultants on, like from going from a consultant somewhere else into a new organization. They might take a consultant who has been consulting for them, and they may say, okay, we want you to go full time now, but they're very reluctant to take on board a consultant because they see that they've got long-term experience as just a consultant, not doing day-to-day management skills. So part of my question was, how do consultants overcome that?
I think it was probably in a similar route that the previous question with regard to volunteering and pro bono. I see William raising the hand, so please go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I'd make a I did quite a lot of executive search in one of my consultancy businesses, which is, again, pretty odd for the panel. One of the things we found that is really obvious, and most people don't do it, is that you tailor your approach to suit the requirement. So a lot of people, for example, they'll send in the same CV to more or less anything. So one of the things that's, fairly obvious, but is to stress in your application the skills that you think they want. So you've said, for example, you've led teams, you've done this, that, and the other. If you focus on the fact that you've done that and what you achieved and things were done on time, in the IT market, if you're looking for an IT leader that can get stuff done on time, that's pretty strong. That's a really good thing to talk about. So in some ways, it's about making sure that your approach is tailored exactly to the role and the people that you're talking to, rather than expecting you to put in your same old consultancy CV and expect them to work out that actually you could be quite a good leader. It's about, again, I suppose, marketing yourself in the right kind of way. And it's not impossible to do. I'm not saying obviously lie on your CV or anything, but I'm saying everybody stresses, the certain elements that are important to them and important to what they want to do next. So that's just a kind of fairly straightforward answer to that tricky question.
Oh, thank you.
From the rest of the panel, is anyone who wants to chime in? I think Hank had to leave now. Anne, yes, please go ahead.
Yes, I'd like to make a comment. And I'm probably going to offend half the panel because I notice quite a lot of the people on the panel are actually academics. But what really worries me sometimes is that an academic is hired to do a study as a consultant and comes in and really thinks that they can change the world because they've got very good qualifications. Now, I'm not being negative about academic qualifications, but what I'm saying is that like consultants, and all the people on the panel have consultancy experience, it really is not pushing yourself forward, but listening to what the client wants. Now, as I mentioned earlier, sometimes what the client wants you to say isn't really right for the organization. And that's a very, very difficult, slippery slope to be on. You have to very gently persuade them that there are better ways and give them examples of where better ways have happened. So if you're an academic in the audience, or please don't go in and think because you're an academic, you know everything and you can change the world. That just gets up the nose of clients tremendously.
Yeah, just going to mention, William had quite a lot of experience also as consultant, which is in the panel. He has experience as academic as well. Have one question in the...
Yeah, so it's just to add up. I'm Raffaella Valsecchi, I'm a reader in human resource management. And actually, I joined this presentation because since last year, a third of my students doing MSc in human resources, they have actually a background in ICT. So we have a very group of international students, mainly from India. And it was quite, all the conversation was very much interesting. And I just found that probably I wanted also to make sense their own choice of they decided to do this MSc to give a change to their own career. They all had experience in working in ICT in the sector, and they want to change and to start a career in leadership. Some of them in consultancy. So. For them to do an MSc in human resources is perceived probably a stepping stone, by considering the fact that they are not from the UK. I don't know what the panel think about that. If it's a good strategy, probably to understand about elements of managing people.
Right, and obviously, human is one of the resources that is harder to manage, right?
Yeah.
So, what the panel first are going to go live. So, anyone online you want to chime in? Yes, William, please.
Only because I'm in academia, obviously. So one of the big things I found when running a large organisation in IT, and there was lots of different teams, and they all differed, and I was very, very, very puzzled as to why they all had the same stuff. They were all highly motivated. They'd all been trained. They'd all done this, that, and the other, and yet they had extremely different performances. So I started thinking about why that could be. Probably wrote a program about it. I'm not quite remember, but it was obvious that it was something to do with the people. And it was also obvious that I didn't understand the people. So funnily enough, I did a degree in human resources while I was an IT director, just to try and understand what was going on, given I didn't have any natural facility. And then I ended up doing a doctorate in psychology, and there, that's why I ended up where I am today, as they say. So I think it is, somehow or other, you need to learn about the people. I'm not saying you necessarily need to have an MSc, because I take Anne's point as well. Academia can be slightly ivory tower in some ways. But certainly to learn about people and how they work, if you don't know already, is a very good idea. And bizarrely enough as well, we quite often find that leaders that are not very good, they know the stuff, they just don't apply it in work. So when they're at home, they're perfectly charming, they treat people with dignity, they can get the kids to do stuff, it's all fine. But when they get to work, for some reason or other, they change into, a till of the hun or something, and are not quite so good. So I think it's a very good idea to learn some way or the other about how people work.
Right. Anne, I think you were raising your hand. Please go ahead.
I just have to support William. I think that's a great story. In fact, I reached a point, I think when I was about 50, I reached a point that I thought, I understand computers. I understand how they all work, but I really don't understand how people work and how they tick. And I did a psychology course for 2 years, and I learned an awful lot, and that really helped me for the future, both in managing teams and doing consultancy.
Thank you very much, Anne. I think really, Ali, you have that's comment.
Yeah, I can't understate how important the people aspect is, because it just infuses through everything that we do in technology and consultancy leadership. And it varies right from how do you design your organization and ways of working, which is all about the people, get you into areas that I first learned from Gartner around cognitive load, but right through to something that I don't think we still as a profession spend enough time on, which is change adoption. We can deliver all the bells and whistles and fancy technologies you want. If it's not used, then it's just wasted investment. And that's where some of the real experts I've worked with over the years can talk to you about what resistors are, the way your brain's wired, the 50 biases that can counteract it, all those kind of things that come into play when you're putting together a proper change adoption plan. So, and all that comes back to people. So I don't know what's covered in MSc, but I would echo what the panelists have been saying around the importance of it all.
Right. I'm conscious, a little bit conscious about the time, especially for our panelists that call us for far away. I have to excuse Hank, who didn't have the ability to continue the meeting. We'll follow up with him so I can put some links from him. And I'm just going to do a quick round for all the panelists, just to give a last thought, last word, and then I will move to completion. I'm going to follow the same order than before. So the first one that I will give the word is going to be Anne. Anne, some last
yes,
words.
What would you like me to do?
Some few last words for today's event.
Oh yes, I just want to say I've really enjoyed working with this panel, but I also feel that sometimes when you're out there consulting, or even when you're a leader, it's a lonely place. You're not really sure who you can talk to about the issues that you see you've raised. And I must say, both the British Computer Society and the Australian Computer Society have given me access to a whole crowd of people who really have the same sort of experiences as I do. And they've made a wonderful forum to help me bounce ideas off.
Thank you very much. And I completely agree with that. The British Computer Society is bringing all this community together. The next one that I'm going to move is going to be Ali. Ali?
Yeah, I think one of the things that really resonated with me was something Jane said at the start of this, which is when you move from an enterprise role back into consultancy, you've actually got a real insight to make yourself a more effective consultant. You understand the pressures of sitting in the seat. You can relate to that better, and you can bring that back to the part as a consultancy. So I think that's one of the strengths you get from moving between the roles. And I would certainly reinforce what Jane said in that one.
Thank you very much. Amit, you will be next.
So yes, I believe as a true and exceptional CTO or any IT leader, you would need to do the right things. And from a people perspective, you need to train your people to be resilient and determined. So I think those are the two main aspects that I would highlight on top of what I said earlier on. So it's doing the right things and making your people resilient, so they can fight any sort of issues or any fire that they have, or they can solve any issue that your organization has, any need that your organization has, or whatever macro or micro economy or micro anything that is happening, bigger picture or small picture, they can handle it. So I think that's what I would say. Yes.
Thank you very much, Amit. Daniel, going to you.
Yeah, I think it's probably about immersing yourself, and that's about immersing yourself in different situations, but also different perspectives. I think actually one thing I've probably taken today is actually probably need to do a psychology course. So I think, just surround yourself by different people, surround yourself with different opportunities if you can, and keep growing.
Thank you very much. Going to continue. I think the next one in the list was William. William.
Yeah, I'd like to just slightly go back to a previous question about the skill versus experience and art. If you look at the levels of engagement across the world today and the levels of performance of most organizations, our big problem actually isn't the difference between stellar leaders and pretty good leaders. It's the fact that a large proportion of especially first-line leaders are awful. You know, they're really, really, really terrible. And the interesting thing is that the difference between a terrible leader and an average leader is a set of fairly straightforward skills. And one of them, as an example, believe it or not, is how to tell somebody off. You know, do you do it in the middle of the room, shake them by the shoulders and throw them through the window, which is not uncommon? or do you do it in a more dignified fashion, which follows a process? So quite an interesting way of looking at things is that, you know, the skill gets you to a level where you're a pretty good leader. And if you focus on that, then the worst natural leaders that I've ever seen have been, you know, reasonable. Not great, but reasonable. You know, they can do the job. If you then add on to that some experience of doing leadership and you get better at it as you go through, and then you add on to that, you know, that some people have got natural personalities that are great at leadership, etc., that's great. But if you focus on the wrong way round, which is to say, you know, you need this kind of personality, you need this kind of transformation, you need this kind of authenticity in order to be a leader at all, then you're focused on the wrong stuff. The first thing you need is the basic skills. And there's probably about 10 things you need to do very well, like how not to run a really boring meeting. So, you know, for anybody going from consultancy to leadership, I'd suggest just get the basic skills of leadership under your belt so you can be an effective and reasonable leader, and then worry about the rest as it comes along.
Yep. To add to this, I think the leaders come in all shapes and sizes, so there's no cookie cutter approach to it. But yeah, most leaders are reasonable, and that's what gives you that the organization that edge. You need to be a safe pair of hands, and deliver consistent results consistently. So you build your credibility. I think that's what I would say.
Yes. And Jane, I'm not going to forget about you now.
Okay, so I just wanted to just go back to one question as well, and then I'll very quickly summarize. And just on sales, when I was talking about sales, there were two sorts of sales. I was supporting a sales team who were trying to sell consultancy to different organizations. So that was sales. But there's selling and selling. There's also selling yourself, your ideas and everything to the people you're working with. So I just wanted to clarify that it wasn't all being the car salesman. It's also just trying to sell ideas and what you're doing to people that I meant. So it's been a great conversation. But what I'd say to everybody is make sure you enjoy doing what you're doing. If you don't enjoy it, you're not going to succeed anyway. So choose a topic you enjoy. And whether you're in consulting or you're in a leadership role, bring all your experience that you can to bear. You never know what part of your background might be useful in any situation. And finally, I believe you need EQ, you need emotional intelligence so that you can relate to your customer, to your team that you're managing, to your stakeholders, whomever it may be.
Going to the closure of the meeting, just going to mention, I mean, we have had an excellent panel. I just want to thank you to all the panelists. I think we didn't have the time to scratch the surface of all what we have been discussing. So probably I would like to follow up into a deeper level. As I said, I mean, just want to say thanks again to the panelists, and just going to ask for an applause, and we will continue. Thank you very much.